All right. So, shutdown, standoff, and hidden stakes. That is what we're talking about. That is exactly what's going on right now. As we all know, we have a shutdown, and I'm going to show you that this is not the usual typical standoff that you see. That is not what you expect to see from this situation that we currently have with the government. All right. So what's going on? I'm going to show you. I'm going to demonstrate to you. There are several factors at play here, and there might not be the most obvious one. And I will show you, and this is important, especially if you work for the government, that this is not going to be resolved very quickly. This is gonna take some time, and I will explain to you why. First of all, so Washington is at a standstill. There's been 4 Senate votes to reopen the government, and they have all failed. The House now is out of session, and Speaker Mike Johnson has abruptly canceled all votes for next week. And there might be a hidden reason for that. And that may have something to do with Epstein, and I will explain, believe it or not. But beneath the surface, the shutdown may not be the only reason for the political deadlock. Right? You should know that Adelita Grisvala is a congresswoman elected from Arizona whose swearing in has been mysteriously delayed. A single vote could tip the balance on a discharge petition that would force the release of a long-suppressed Jeffrey Epstein file. Yes, indeed. So basically what you've got a situation where they're not talking to each other. And that's the problem. The Democrats are not talking to each other, are not talking to the Republicans, and they basically want they want the president's attention. They want to show, they make a show of force. They want to show that this is serious. That's what they want to do. They are relevant. They are important. That's what the Democrats want. But at the same time, interwoven into this situation is the fact that we have this congresswoman that hold the pending vote, because they need 218 votes for them to completely release everything having to do with Epstein. And this was, I talked about this in a previous live. And it was Massey and Democrats that had put this together, which Johnson really doesn't want. I mean, the Speaker of the House essentially is saying, listen, we have released everything. This is so much cacophony and more release of information, more damaging. We have asked for lots of information. Lots of information have been released on Epstein already. Enough is enough. Fine. The point is, they need 218 to force a vote. And that congresswoman from Arizona is the deciding factor. She will make that possible. But since she's been newly elected, she needs to be sworn in. And coincidentally enough, Speaker Johnson said, not next week. Of course, I will explain to you as well that maybe it's part of the strategy that they're working, because don't forget, there's a shutdown going on at the same time. And that's probably what's going on right now. But it could also be. So let's talk about those 4 failed Senate votes. Let's talk about what does it mean? How long can we stay shut down? What's the impact? And, the daily swearing in of Grijalva and its impact on the Epstein file release. And what this all means in the balance of power heading into mid-October. So what do we have? Well, let's start at the beginning, and it's quite interesting, I will tell you. It is quite interesting because at the end of the day, what you're having 2 groups of people that basically are talking past each other. This is very unusual. So what we know so far is that the Senate recently failed multiple votes to pass competing bills to reopen the government. The party market, nearly half of the bettors expect the shutdown to last beyond October 15, and I agree with that. With only 8% believe that it will end between October 3rd and October 5th. Although I don't know how that's going to be, since next week, Johnson said we're not in session next week. We're not talking next week. Political actors appears entrenched on contentious demands, especially over healthcare subsidies. So to cut down to the chase for you, my dear subscribers and members, basically what the Democrats are saying, we want healthcare, and the Republicans are saying right now, we just want to break for a couple of weeks to be able to talk about it, and we're not gonna agree to such tactics. And you know who we don't hear much about at all is the president. I know you've seen lots of information and funny memes coming out of him and videos, AI videos, but he hasn't said anything. In fact, to the matter, he's probably making things worse, according to the Democrats, by basically saying, you know what, the longer this is lasts, I'm going to fire a bunch of people. You're giving me the power to do it, and you're giving me the power, which he has already started, to cut projects related to the Democrats. So given those signals, it says that the odds of the shutdown end this week is roughly 10 to 20, I would say maybe 10 to 20%. So this shutdown is going to go on. On the lower side, because both sides seems unwilling to budge, and the complexity of tying, the healthcare provisions, raises the stakes. On the higher side, because of political pressure, public attention, and the risk of deeper damage, might incentivize a deal. What could happen, the more they talk, because at the end of the day, this is all about perception, right? How you, the American people, are going to view this. Are you going to blame the Republicans or you blame the Democrats? Because that's all they care at the end of the day. The Democrats are going to say, well, I'm fighting for a good cause here. I'm fighting for healthcare. Don't you want healthcare for your people? Who's going to say no? No one is going to say no, right? You're not going to say no to that. Of course you want healthcare for your people. So I don't see what's a big deal. And the Republicans are going to say, no, we don't agree. We don't agree because let's talk about it, but not under the circumstances. So they're talking past each other, and that's a problem. And the president basically looks and stands and I think seems to enjoy the fight. But they want to talk, they want to posterize, right? And then the question is going to be, who is going to be hurt? And obviously the more people talk or don't talk, the more people do or don't do will have an impact on what's going on at the end of the day with what they're saying. Right? Because, obviously if you don't like the Republicans, you're going to say, well, come on, give the people the health insurance. And why are you taking health insurance away from the illegals, right? And if you like the Republicans, you're going to say, well, what's going on? You're trying to redelegate, rediscuss all over again the big beautiful bill, or you're just trying to, as it being mentioned, that basically the Senate leader wants to be more royalist than the king, essentially, meaning that wants to go all the way to the left, right, to appeal to certain constituents because he is about to lose his seat to another Democrat. So he wants to remain leader of the House. Is that the real reason? Do you know it? Do I know it? No one knows. The point is what we can know. We could see how the players are being put together and how it works one step at a time. The thing is, overall, looking from where I'm standing, is they're talking past each other. And that's a problem. Okay? Now, why is this a problem? Well, because the last one under President Trump, which at that time was the longest government shutdown, lasted about 35 days. This one could last longer. So what happens in a shutdown? So we're all on the same page. Well, essentially, what happens is on the first week, right? Federal workers, 2.2 million. Many are furloughed or working without pay. Paychecks missed create financial strain. So these people, they're not getting paid. They're not spending any money, you know. Contract workers, janitors, cafeteria staff, security, often not reimbursed even after the government shutdown is over. Tourists and local economies, national park, museum, but I'm sure you know about this already, right? You heard about the tourism. So the museums are closed, folks. You can't visit the White House. Federal permitting and paperwork delays. Passports, visa, forget about that. It's going to be delayed. Now we're entering week 2. Now what happens in week 2? And that is where it becomes interesting. First of all, families relying on government support, like the WIC, right? Nutrition for women, infant, and children faces cutbacks. SNAP, food stamps, going to start to get impacted. Air travel, TSA officers and traffic controllers working unpaid. You know, I'm not going to go to work if I don't get paid. Maybe you might not want to travel next week. Small businesses, federal loan approval, SBA loans, development programs, freeze. We're done with that. If you're trying to start a business next week, probably not the best time. Scientific and health research, NIH clinical trials paused, the FDA inspections are reduced. So we're going to go through that definitely. Now, week 3. Broader economic data and markets. Now we're starting to talk Turkey. The Labor Department, Census Bureau, release of information. That's going to start to be impacted. Farmers, USDA programs stall. Defense contractors and supplies, payments are delayed. Trickle down layoffs in private sector. If you're in the private sector doing business with the government, that is going to be a lot of damage. Housing, loan approval stall, hurting first-time home buyers and veterans. So I think we're definitely going to go through week 2. More likely than not, we're talking week 3. I think we're going to get to number 4. Financial markets, rising uncertainty, higher treasury yields, stock volatility, credit rating, risk of downgrades as the shutdown drags, and debt ceiling issues overlap. Broader economy. Now, don't forget, these people, these 2 million people that are not getting paid, they're not spending any money. Number two, the people that were getting paid from the government, they're not getting paid ever, right? They're not going to get the money. The government does not have to pay you back. When there's a shutdown and it's over, if you're a government worker, you get back pay. So that's why you keep working, because you're going to get paid. The thing is, what the current administration has said is, I will be firing some of you, and you're not coming back and you're not getting paid back. Now, they haven't done it yet, but it looks like they're inching in doing that. That could be a problem. So the first one hits going to be the federal workers, then you got week is the low-income families, the farmers, and finally the entire economy and the financial system. By week 4, obviously all that money that was supposed to be pumped through is not going to be pumped through. And frankly, at this point, if in the U.S. administration, you could say, well, can you really afford to slow down the economy right now? Because at the end of the day, and we'll do a live on that, if you look at exactly what's going on with the economy, on the plus side, yes, GDP is doing great. Yes, stock market is doing great. No, job creation is very weak. No, inflation is going up. Yes, we're going to have lower rates to help things out. The question is, the jury is still out, because the tariff situation now is permeating through the economy. And the concern is you're going to see a lot more inflation coming through. And we have started to see it. I've started to see it. So then if inflation is up, and job creation is low. Now, it doesn't mean that the economy is slowing down. It doesn't mean we have recession because GDP is at 3%. You know, unemployment rate is very low considering. So we don't have a problem with that. What we might have a problem at some point is the fact that you could see a situation where you've got a slowdown in the economy and inflation, which is called stagflation, but we're not there yet. Okay, so let's not get too carried away. So what is it that, you know, some of the tactical moves done by the Republicans? You know, what have they done since the shutdown? So what they've done five things, right? So the first thing that they've done, number one, is they have started freezing funding in Democratic areas. So the administration has begun withholding funds to transit and infrastructure in Democratic controlled jurisdictions. $2.1 billion in Chicago transit funding was frozen. What are you doing? I thought we wanted to talk. Don't do that. So that tells me the Republicans are pretty confident. This is a more aggressive pressure than just political rhetoric. They're not just talking, they're doing. It signals a willingness to escalate financial pain as negotiating leverage. You know, at the end of the day, what the Democrats are doing, and they got what they want, they were going after Trump, really. That's who they're going after. Right? That's who they want to talk to, and he knows it. And of course, you know, that's how he's responding. Number two, threats of layoffs and staffing cuts. The Office of Management and Budget has directed federal agencies to prepare reduction in force, you know, they call the IIF, should the shutdown continue. Now, don't underestimate the ability of this administration to do this. You know, they fired the lady that was in charge of the Bureau of Labor Statistics, BLS, because they said that you know, the numbers don't look good. You didn't manage properly. They didn't say that she, you know, I don't think she falsified the number. Maybe she could have done a better job in managing the group because they had huge amount of employment data that was modified and then reassessed and then republished. I mean, they said at one point that they had created 125,000 jobs sometime in June or in July. Then it was down to 20, and then they realized that in July, you know what, it's not 20, it's actually minus 12. What are you doing? Bureau of Labor Statistics, we rely on your information to know what's going on in the economy. And if you can't rely on that, what can you rely on, right? And this is kind of what we're seeing. So they're threatening layoffs. The White House is floating cuts, what it calls Democratic agencies broadly. Number three, now of course, once you start to cut through the muscle, that's going to hurt a lot. It's going to create even more issues. It's going to be even more difficult to get together and come back. Because then if you're the Democrats and this happens to your people, and then you say, you know what, fine, let's reopen the government. You say, wow, so what did you achieve? We lost a bunch of contracts, a bunch of people got fired, and you still you still agreed now to open the government again. So if he does this and they do it, then it's going to make the matter go even longer because they're going to want something back from this. And remember, and I tell you that to all my subscribers all the time, is that you need to realize that these people play chess. They don't play checkers. So you may see the most immediacy of the decision, but it doesn't mean that that's what they really want. Okay? Number three, conditional softening on health subsidies. Vice President Vance offered to talk Obamacare subsidy with Senate Democrats. I mean, he's the head of the Senate after all. But only if they agree to reopen the government first. And they say, but we tried to do that the last time, and you guys keep talking and you never agree with us. This is a small adjustment in posture, signaling some openness to discussion, but maintaining the demand that reopening comes first. Now, of course, you know, why did JD do that? Well, JD wants to be president at some point. right? So he wants to show, because don't forget, you're playing chess. Later on, he could say, "Look, I try to be open, and you guys reported it. So I'm not a hard head. I'm bipartisan, right?" But they're saying no. Number 4, public blame messaging and pressure campaigns. Officials are increasingly casting Democrats as obstructionists and using communication channels to frame the narratives, including accusation of political hostage taking. So basically what you're saying is you're seeing them not talking, first they're talking past each other. They're not talking to each other. They're talking to everyone else, right? So you go, if you're a Democrat, you go with Democratic friendly media and you tell them what you want them to hear. And that's exactly what you hear from them. Look, they're not listening. They want, they don't like healthcare. We want healthcare. We want to help you. Right? On the other hand, the Republicans are saying we can't deal with these guys. They're trying to hijack the process, and we're not going to do that. You see what I mean? On top of that, they're doing all this to give healthcare to illegal aliens. Now, we should talk about this a little bit. I mean, it's not exactly true, right? We're talking. Don't forget this. There's about 2 million people that involves that they're talking about. But basically, there are 2 million people that came to this country illegally, but then were giving status. They were giving refugee status. So while their claim is being processed at the state level, they get to have health care. So you make it sound like there's 10 million illegals running around, and the Democrat wants to give at the federal level, healthcare for all of them for free. It's not exactly true. It's not untrue, but it depends where you want to look at it. Okay, but that's the message that they're delivering. And if you're on one side, you say no, none at all. Well, it is what it is. So officials are increasingly casting Democrats as obstructionists. And the White House shutdown clock and public statement emphasize the urgency and the site name. And 5, no deviation yet on core demand. Republicans have not yet formally backed down from the insistence that health subsidy and other policy issues be separated from the funding legislation. They continue to reject Democrats' linking of the two. So what does that mean for you? Well, it means that this is a very different type of shutdown. This is going to be a long-lasting shutdown because they are talking about items that are not, that they basically are talking up their own games in a separate kind of ways. I want healthcare. I want to open the government. I want healthcare. I want to open the government. Well, then how do we get in the... Well, stop talking about healthcare so we could open the government again. Right? They're making purely procedural. Now they're saying, he wants to be reelected. Schumer, the head of the Senate, wants to be reelected. That's why he's posturizing himself to show his base that this is what he's willing to do. That's what he's willing to do for the healthcare and the Democrats. Now, a couple of months ago, he had started it, then he backed down, right? And that's not going to happen again. He will not let that happen again. So when you have two people that are not talking to each other and talking past each other, and they're talking to, it's like two kids, who broke the vase, in the living room, right? Well, they each telling you, I didn't break it. I was there to break. When I got there, it was broken, and I didn't break it because I wasn't in the house. And they're all talking to the mother or the father. They should be talking to each other to make sure that you know who's telling the truth and who's not telling the truth. Because, he wasn't in the house. I never saw him there. Yes, I did. No, I didn't. You see what I mean? So you're just there as a spectator. The only thing is, these people have jobs, right? They're getting paid. You may not. Don't forget, as a government worker, you will get reimbursed unless the administration decides to fire you. Don't forget, the money that you get as a contractor, subcontractor from the government, you may not get paid. Don't forget, the government might decide to fire you regardless. And it's happening already. They are delaying major Democratic jobs, especially having to do in Chicago. So this is a real thing. This is really happening, right? And you should pay attention. You should pay great attention. Now, what are the Democrats on the congressional doing? Well, they're doubling down on Lincoln strategy. Democrats are more publicly firm, and they will not vote for a funding bill unless the AC healthcare subsidies are included. That's very clear, right? I am not opening the door unless you give me the key. Senate Democrats say that the demand is a real substantive concern, not merely a negotiating ploy, even though they're delaying a vote that, frankly, frankly, I don't know if it was such a big deal for them, right? But that's what they're doing, and they feel that this is important to them, so that they could say, we went down with the ship, and the ship is going down, my friends. Hakeem Jeffrey, for example, refused to support a short-term funding patch that excludes the health credit. No, we're going to stand firm, although 3 Democrats kind of jumped shit, by the way. We're going to stand firm, and we're going to love health care until the end. Number 2, threat to use shorter stoppages after shutdown. They want to do shorter stop gaps. Some internal discussion within Democratic circles suggests that if the government enters shutdown, they might propose 1 or 2 week stoppage to give breathing room while pushing their condition more forcefully. And that's what they're trying to do. 3, stronger rhetoric and political messaging. Democrats are framing the freeze of funds to Democratic states and threats to workers as a punitive and politically motivated, seeking to mobilize public backslash. That's what I mean, right? What they're doing, and the more things happen, the more people fight, the more there's argumentation, the more risky it becomes to the balance shifting from one side or the other. What they're doing right now, they're trying to see what works and what doesn't work. What I mean by that is they're saying, okay, well, we say no to healthcare because of healthcare. That's good. And Republicans are saying, listen, they're hijacking the process. Okay? Now we're adding something new. We're adding the fact that we're being punitive against them. Is that a good thing or is that a bad thing? Right? Because, again, if you're losing your job, are you going to blame the Democrats or are you going to blame the Republicans? The Democrats are going to say, well, blame the Republicans because of them. They took the action. Yeah, but the reason this happened is because of you. You did it. You made it happen, not me. Right? You caused it by doing it. That's why they did it. If you didn't do all this, I would have my jobs. I don't care whose fault it is. You see the dilemma that they have, and that's exactly what's happening. And it's political messaging at the end of the day. Number 4, willingness to negotiate post-reopening. While holding firm on their red line, Democrats have indicated that they're open to negotiating the details, but only if reopening comes first. So basically saying, I want to talk too, but sign up first. No, you sign up first, not me. You did. Do you know what I mean? So we want to do it, but only after we get past to this stage. But you cannot get past to this stage unless you agree. That's why it's impossible. No major concession yet. Importantly, there is no sign Democrats have surrendered on their core demands. The linkage between funding and healthcare is still non-negotiable. What I think is going to happen is as the money stops flowing, because that's a fact, right? As the money stops, because you could say, you're going to get paid, so don't worry about it. So keep working. Yeah, but the point is, the money is not flying through the economy. It's not. So that means that you're slowing down the economy. Now, a week maybe doesn't make a big difference. 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, that's going to start to impact the numbers. And if it goes beyond, don't forget, these are permeating effects. For example, if you were working for the government and you hired a bunch of people to do this job, and now the government is shut down, they do not have to pay you. Therefore, you cannot pay your people. Therefore, you have to let them go. Therefore, they can't spend, you can't spend. You see what I mean? Then the whole process slows down. So as it slows down, the government is going to have to make a tough decision, because the fact of the matter is inflation is not under control. Can you afford to weaken the economy? No, we're talking 1 to 2 weeks. Again, like I said, it's not a big deal. But what about 4 weeks? What about 5 weeks, 6 weeks? The last one lasted 30 days. This one is going to last a lot longer. Now, the messaging is going to be a lot more difficult. Why? Well, because now you're going to have to explain, what did you guys gain from it? Well, we fired a bunch of people. And eventually the Democrats came back to the table. Yeah, but they were trying to defend healthcare, so that's a good thing to do, isn't it? That's what you want. No, but the way they did it, we just didn't like it. Well, you took advantage of it. Now you fired all these people. You went after them. Right? No, but they're doing it because they want to give health care to illegals. Well, not to all the illegals, right? I mean, really? I mean, we're talking big money, by the way. You're talking about 2 million people. I think the numbers, I think it's like $100 billion, $120 billion. That's a lot of money for people that are refugees, essentially. But again, it's at the state level. But the state gets its money from the government. So from the government, so it's not so much so state. But the point is, it's going to be a game of workmanship in terms of how you negotiate and how you're being perceived, which is for me, that's a problem, because you're not really concerned so much about the people. You're really concerned about the way you are going to appeal. Although they use the people as a mean to say, well, I'm helping the people's healthcare. What do you think I'm doing? I'm helping the people government. We got to stop spending money. We owe $37 trillion, right? I did a very interesting live yesterday on whether or not the U.S. Is able to maintain its war readiness, which is not the greatest at this point. The U.S. needs to do a lot more. And now, on top of that, you're saying that the U.S. can't keep its house in order. And at the end of the day, it's the president's responsibility, right? He's the chief of the state and the executive. And you have a shutdown. That means that you got a problem in your house, in your household. So you have a problem in your household. You can't keep inflation together. You're not ready for war. You're losing ground in terms of what's going on with semiconductors. What have you done? What have you done apart from, the tariffs, which they're not even legal? So you see, the story can be told many ways, and the way it's going to come out is the way that people are perceiving it, and that's very important, because elections, believe it or not, the midterms are coming up. That's why hopefully this thing with Israel and Gaza gets resolved. But from what I hear, there's some agreement. But and of course, there is a fact that Epstein is in the corner. Believe it or not. And that's quite interesting, I have to say. So let me tell you a little bit of that, and then I'll do a live on Epstein. But frankly, that one is so. So what's going on with the Epstein angle here? Believe it or not. So basically, Speaker Johnson is pulling out the House out next week. He said, we're not coming to work next week. And what has been reported is it's an escalation strategy, pressure tactic. So Johnson is framing it as we've done our work. The House already passed its version of a funding extension, so now it's the Senate. So we're out. In this messaging, he suggests returning only when the Senate allows us to reopen the government. Because as you may or may not know, the House passed that bill. Now the Senate needs to do it. So obviously the Senate is going to make some changes or not. And then the House has to vote it again. But whatever is happening is not happening next week because he's not there. The reason also he's not there is he wants to avoid more failed votes. We had 4 thus far. By staying out of session, Johnson avoids putting members in the position of voting on measures that might fail, which could show GOP disunity or weaken messaging. Right? You don't want a Republican to jump ship. Also, the House would need 48 hours notice to return, giving Johnson better control over when votes happen. He's a stickler about details. And number 3, swearing in delay and control over discharge petition. There is a related fight over the swearing in of, and this is where the Epstein situation comes in, of Republican-elect Adelita Gravala, whose signature is crucial to a discharge, and listen to this, discharge petition to force a vote on releasing Epstein-related files. The reason you want to force a vote is because Republican leader Johnson delays that process. He does not want to have any more of those Epstein-related discussion for obvious reason from his side. He says that Gavilda will be sworn in when the House returns. Doesn't have to be it could be anytime he wants. Number 4, Republican messaging and blame framing. Johnson and other GOP leaders are emphasizing that Democrats are not serious about negotiating. They are positioning Republicans as having done their part, and is therefore painting subsequent inaction as a Democrat's fault. You see how it's being... This is the life of a politician. Why this makes sense? Why is this a strategic move of not coming to work next week? Well, first, he controlled timing and optics. Delaying votes gives the GOP time to try messaging campaigns, applying pressure, or shifting public attention rather than being forced into a hasty floor vote or avoid conflict. Force Senates to lead. The House is putting their burden on the Senate. Listen, we did our thing. It's up to you now. It avoids intra-GOP fractures. Some House Republicans may balk at certain votes, especially over health subsidy or controversial riders. Keeping them off the floor limits internal rebellion risk. Leverage external pressure point by stretching the shutdown into a longer period. Johnson may hope public pressure. On midway through federal worker or unpaid status or disruption to services creates urgency to Democrats to negotiate. Maybe they are just waiting. Maybe they're just waiting for the pressure to build up. On the Democrat side, they say, hey, it's your fault they don't have a job. Talk to the Democrats. So let's talk about Adelita, right? What's going on? Well, she's basically Arizona 7th District. Why does she matter suddenly so much? Well, the House is a very narrow Republican majority, and her swearing in would further narrow that margin. And there is a discharge petition circulating that would force a vote on releasing Justice Department Epstein file, release even more information. That petition currently requires 218 signatures in Congress. She has pledged that she will sign the petition once sworn in. She would likely be the 218th person that Massey, which is a Republican, is looking for, not a great friend of Trump. He wants to have everything having to do with Epstein to be released. However, because she has not yet been sworn, she can't yet cast a vote. Don't forget, they're going to force 218 votes will force a vote in Congress, bypassing the leader of the House, bypassing Johnson, who does not want to release any more information because he said they've released enough information. There is controversy over why Johnson has delayed her swearing in. Critics argue it's politically motivated to prevent her from enabling that vote. Now, I have to tell you that so far there's been lots of information being released about Epstein. You may be. I will do a live on that to go into more details. But basically, you know, the who lost his job? Well, the UK ambassador lost his job over it. I don't know if you remember her, but she was. Then there's also the wife, the former wife of Prince Andrew, that's in hot water right now because there's release of information that shows that she was having some discussion, and after he was indicted, and lots of information as well pertaining to financiers that had dealings with Epstein after his first conviction, knowing that he was convicted, although he only did a year in jail, if you could call that jail, but he was convicted at that time. And they still did business with him. Take a look at it. I'll give you some of the detail in my next live. You know, like somebody gave him $50,000, and he gave the $50,000 back. And then, of course, they're bringing back the fact that, the former head of Apollo, paid him $156 million. And then recently, the Trade Secretary Lutnick said that he went to Epstein's house. He went to Epstein's house and essentially said that, in fact, let me tell you what he said. He went to the house and I'll tell you what happened. I think you're going to like that. So basically, Howard Lutnick, you know who he is, right? Hopefully I don't have to explain to you that he has everything to do with the tariffs. But anyway, he recalled a discussion, a meeting that he had, and he went into Epstein's house because he lived next to him. And he called Epstein, finally somebody called him up, the greatest blackmailer ever. And basically he claimed that during a visit to Epstein's Manhattan townhouse, Lutnick lived right next door to him. Epstein showed him a massage room and told him he got the right kind of massage. Wink, wink. No, so he went into the house, and it's a huge house in the apartment, in Manhattan. And he got there, and in the middle of there's a huge room where there's a massage. He says, I'm getting the right kind of massage. Quick, wink, wink. And made the remark in a way that made Lutnick very uncomfortable. So he told his wife, we're leaving. So based on that encounter and what he observed, Lutnick speculated that Epstein may have recorded compromising footage of wealthy and powerful associates and used those recordings for blackmail. He further suggested that such recordings could have been traded to prosecutors as part of the ideal Epstein, the deal that he got in 2008, and that the plea deal might have been in part a quid pro quo for withholding or providing those tapes. Lutnick admitted that he had no knowledge confirming the theory. He framed purely speculation. But when you know that Epstein, and there's a bunch of other people, but the top guys, one was the head of Apollo, right? Apollo Investment Bank, who paid him $156 million. I said, why did you give this guy so much money? Well, he managed I'm worth $2 billion, so, Still, that's a lot of money to give to someone. The head, the founder of Limited, Limited, Victoria's Secret and all that, he actually gave Epstein power of attorney over all his affairs. Why? I guess he must be a genius of all genius of managing money, I guess. And, but now Lutnick is actually saying he was the greatest blackmailer ever. You went in there, you tried it out, and it was filmed, and he used it against you. You also should know that that Epstein, at the beginning, before all this started, got involved in a Ponzi scheme. Ponzi scheme, remember the Wizard of Wall Street? Right? Madoff? $40 billion, $50 billion, $50 billion, right? Of a Ponzi scheme. Well, he was involved in a Ponzi scheme and he got away, and the other guy got 20 years because he turned on his friend. That's kind of the mentality we're talking about here with Epstein. Never mind all the other stuff. So it's a powerful combination. And when he died, he was worth, what is it, 600 million? No, $600 million. So that's the first thing. So Lutnick was out there talking, and the guy is the greatest blackmailer ever. So maybe that's what's happening. Maybe that's what is going on. So, and of course, because we're having a shutdown, guess what's also stopped? Congressional activity is paused and delayed. Because Congress is not holding votes or floor session during the shutdown, key procedural steps needed to force or authorize more disclosure are stalled. For example, the swearing of a new member, as we talked about before, that has been delayed. Leadership may use a shutdown strategically. Some observers believe the shutdown is being exploited to avoid having to conduct a vote or take action on releasing sensitive documents. This is pretty deep. For instance, House Speaker Johnson has been criticized for keeping the House in recess even before the shutdown, allegedly to prevent a vote on the standards for releasing Epstein files. Maybe the fact that we have a shutdown certainly helped that case, although you would say, what? I mean, that's too much. Number 3, administrative staffing constraint in agencies. During a shutdown, many federal agencies operate under a contingency basis. Non-essential staffs are furloughed or restricted. That can slow all processes such as document review, reaction to compliance with subpoenas. Why I didn't see a definitive source explicitly stating that the Justice Department document delivery is suspended by the shutdown. There is a general consequence of funding gaps. What's going on? Are we saying that we have a shutdown because they want to delete the release of the Epstein files? Or they're certainly delaying the fact that this Congresswoman cannot vote to release even more information because of the shutdown. But it was delayed before, and now it's further delayed. Is it that bad? I mean, don't forget, they're releasing not everything, but whatever's been released so far in dribs and drabs looks quite interesting. Some people were found having dealing business after. They found that JP Morgan was doing business after he was convicted. In fact, they want to bring the head of JP Morgan in to talk about it. They want to bring all these people in. And there's a lot of people. Momentum, political leverage is diminished. The shutdown shifts attention towards funding fights and away from oversight or accountability issues. That reduces the political urgency and oversight bandwidth for pushing through controversial disclosures. So, what is not clearly changed by the shutdown? Some Epstein-related documents have already been released. The House Oversight Committee has publicly released multiple batches of documents, ledgers, flight logs, and was saying that even Elon Musk was supposed to take a flight schedules. The DOJ has publicly signals limitations in their willingness to release more, not necessarily only because of the shutdown. The department has stated it will stop releasing additional Epstein files beyond what has already been provided. Legal constraint remain powerful and would affect disclosure even in the absence of a shutdown. So the point is, this is a very, very difficult situation. This is a very contentious situation because they're not able to release information. And yet, whatever comes out becomes quite interesting. You realize people actually were catering to Epstein, for example, when we're talking about Fergie. Remember Fergie? She actually got a loan, and in fact, of $3 million, several millions actually, from Epstein, because they were having some difficulties. And Andrews was on that island all the time, from what we've seen. And now the information is released that she herself, after they released her emails, emails got hacked, and you could see she says, "Oh my God, I can't believe that you were indicted, but I'm writing children's books. That's why I couldn't say anything." So all these things are dribbling and drabbing in, and they're quite interesting because people realize that he had a hold on all these people, and he popped. I don't think it was his personality; it was his money, and it was his blackmail, and that's the thing that people are worrying about. That how many more people are being impacted? People rather that this goes away and you don't talk about it. Even within the MAGA movement, they want to know, because at the end of the day, it was about the pool, right? The cesspool, drain the swamp. Well, that's what they're trying to do, draining the swamp. But obviously, not everyone wants it to happen because they say it involves so many people. But whatever is happening, slowly and dripping, there was a list of people that recently got made public. You may not know about them, but, quite interesting characters that gave money to Epstein, and the money was given back to him, back and forth for some reason. And meanwhile, keep in mind, all this is done through banks, and JP Morgan wasn't the biggest bank that was involved. They paid millions, I think hundreds of millions of dollars in fees and compensation without admitting any guilt. Something happened, definitely, but what exactly? So currently, what's going on with this special bill that we're talking about? What is this bill I keep referring to? Well, it's called the Massey Kana Petition/Discharge Request. And where does it stand right now? Well, basically the bipartisan effort. Now, this is bipartisan for real. Thomas Massey, not well liked by the president, by the way, Republican, and Ro Khanna, a Democrat from California, aims to force the House to vote on a resolution requiring the Department of Justice and related agencies to release all unclassified documents related to Jeffrey Epstein. As of now, they are reported to be very close to securing the 218 signatures needed to file a discharge petition which would bypass leadership control and compel floor actions. That is what they are trying to do. As of now, they are reported to be very close. Massey has publicly stated he will soon have the 218 signatures. And then, oops, there was a shutdown. I mean, I'm joking around, but it's very coincidental again. What is going on? Oh. As of now, they are reported to be very close to securing. Khanna has said there are already 216 supporters and that 2 Democrats will join to reach the threshold. One crucial Democrat is expected, again, Adelita Grajalva from Arizona, who won a special election and pledged to sign the petition. But she has not yet been sworn. I mean, you have to believe. It's an incredible set of circumstances you've got to believe, right? We're looking for 218 Republicans plus Democrats. We are almost there, and somehow we get that extra vote from that person that just got elected in a special election, and somehow we happen to have a shutdown. that's even delaying that. Well, let's see what happens after. I'm curious to see if she actually gets voted in and what she says or does. Maybe they're working on some others, trying to make them change their votes. I don't know, because if you claim you're going to do it, if you pull back, you're going to have to give a really good explanation. One crucial signature is needed, but she has not been sworn in, like I said before. The House Oversight Reform Committee, led by Republicans, have proactively released 33,000 pages, but there's nothing in those pages. I mean, I'm not going to say I read them all, but I kind of scanned through, and, there's mostly flat logs and basically, what we already know, but there's not enough information. Nothing new. And it's a little bit like when, what's her name? Ghislaine Maxwell, when she was interviewed, we're going to finally know where are the file. She says, there's nothing happened. I didn't do anything. There's a big misunderstanding. Yes, he gave me loans. Yes, he gave me $30 million. Yes, but I was helping him out. That had nothing to do with the girls. I don't know anything about all this. Nobody did anything. The president didn't do anything. Andrews didn't do anything. If it happened, I didn't know. Please send me to my new jail cell, which happens to be in what we call Club Fed. Speaker Johnson has criticized the petition as inartfully drafted, arguing it lacks adequate protection for the victims and is unnecessarily given the Oversight Committee release. So basically saying we don't need any more pages from Epstein. Stop it because we released a lot and then it's not well drafted. My concern is that innocent people are going to get hurt. The Epstein estate delivered a third batch of documents very recently, call logs, cash ledgers, calendars, to the Oversight Committee, and the committee plans to release them publicly after redacting the victims' names. Massey has reaffirmed that the presence of a name in the file does not imply guilt. And that's going to be interesting. Because they want to get that information out as soon as possible. Now, was there any information found about any blackmail? No. Right? Over the years, online rumors and some talk show dimension alleged that Epstein recorded compromising materials on guests. This theory is recently echoed by Howard Lutnick. This was always dying because it was nothing we couldn't find. And then Lutnick comes out and he said that Epstein might have filmed people in the massage room, but he also admitted he has no direct proof. So that's coming back right up all over again. Confiscated hard drive. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Okay, this is important for me to keep going. And in fact, you should join the channel as a member as well, because what we do in a very systematic kind of way is we look for all those black swans, right? All of these events that will certainly create chaos at some point, either in the stock market or in the economy. That is extremely important. So there's no credible, official, or legally substantial list of individuals who were blackmailed by Epstein. This is pure speculation. Fine, right? Some of the names like Leslie Wexner, right, mentioned in court documents among the unsealed name. Leslie Wexner, very, very famous guy, obviously, right? I mean, Leslie, believe it or not, this was recently unsealed in court documents, he was the head of, who was he? He was the guy that was in charge of the Limited. And, he just kind of went away. And the guy from Apollo kind of just disappears as well. Lots of people. Many of the names come from court filing in civil lawsuits. It doesn't mean because you're in it that you're guilty. We all know that. Elon Musk was in there. Peter Thiel, one public statement points out that Epstein's file invested $40 million in his firm from 2015 to 2016. You have Steve Bannon, and they were supposed to have a breakfast with him. Bill Gates is mentioned in Epstein calendar and interplay of contacts. In fact, his wife, the wife of Bill Gates, divorced him. What was the real reason behind the divorce? Prince Andrew, passenger on the Lolita Express, if you know what that is. So, lots of information being released. We shall see what happens. Leon Black, obviously co-founder and former CEO of Apollo Global Management, and he paid Epstein large sums. He reportedly $158 million between 2012 and 2017 for financial estate and tax advice. Remember, he got indicted in 2008. An independent review commissioned by Apollo board found that Epstein had played a significant role in restructuring Family Trust and tax strategies for Black. After that, Black resigned. He didn't do anything wrong. He just left. Okay, took his money and left. Then we have Leslie Wexner is the best. He was the Limited, and he was the CEO and late owner of the L brand. Epstein had very close financial relationship with Wexner. Epstein managed Wexner's finances, had power of attorney over his assets, and was deeply involved in real estate and philanthropic affairs. So, bottom line is this, folks. This is not over. What you want to watch out for, you want to watch out exactly what happens when maybe next week, if she is allowed to vote, and then beam, right away, this gets released, even more information, or something happens. Or maybe the shutdown goes on and on and on. Don't forget, it doesn't have to stop with the shutdown to release more information, right? Leader Johnson could just say, okay, fine, let's swearing in, and boom, let's put the floor to the vote, and then we could release more information, although he doesn't want to. So follow that one very carefully, because there's a lot of information. Sounds very, very interesting.